How's it going? Dave here, and in today's video, 10 tips for better chord progressions. Let's go. So tip number one is voice leading. Voice leading, to be put simply, is playing a chord progression and keeping all the notes as close together as possible. It makes your chord progressions sound a lot more cohesive. Also, when you're playing all your chords in one kind of place on the fretboard, it opens up other space for other instruments, maybe in a higher or lower register, or another guitar to play in a different area of the fretboard. So let's take a very simple chord progression, C, F, and G. Now, I'm playing with bar chords, and that is completely a correct and okay way of playing that chord progression. However, as you can see, we're moving around the fretboard quite a lot. So there are some big interval jumps happening. What you can do is play maybe your C chord here, play your F chord here, and play your G chord here, like that. And all the notes are really close to each other. You've not moved anything around too much, and there are no big interval jumps. Let's just take the top note in our chords. So from the bar chords, we were going, but now it sounds like this. A lot more of a smoother transition. Another way you could voice lead that same chord progression, maybe higher up, is to play a C major triad here, then play your F major in second inversion, and then play your G major in first inversion. Something that's going to really help you get your voice leading down is learning the caged system. If you haven't learned the caged system, I highly recommend that you do so. This brings me on to tip number two, which is open voiced triads. So let's take those triads that we just played, the C, F, and G, and make them open voiced triads. I've done a video on open voiced triads really recently, which you can check out there. But simply put, an open triad is when we take the middle note in a triad and move it up an octave. So for example, in our C triad, we can take this middle note, raise it an octave, we get that sound. In our F triad, we can take our middle note and raise that up an octave, and we get that sound. And also in our G major triad, we can take that middle note, raise it up an octave, and we get this sound. So all together, and it sounds really lovely. Are you enjoying the video so far? If you are, please click like down below. Tip number three is to add tension and release to your chord progressions. Chord progressions and music in general are based around building tension and releasing that tension. So what you want to do is focus on building a tension and an unrest in your music that builds in intensity until you get that resolution, and the more you build that tension, the more satisfying that payoff of the resolution is going to be for the listener. So let's take a look at how we could potentially do this on guitar. So I'm going to take a fairly simple chord progression, E major, C sharp minor, A, and B. Something we can do is turn this B chord into a dominant 7 chord. That instantly adds some more tension because there is a dissonant interval in there that wants to be resolved. But what we can do is really, really milk that chord and emphasize it and keep it going on forever. So, for example, come on, there's so much tension here that just needs to be released. And see how much more satisfying it was from holding that chord, made the payoff of that much better. Something else you can do when you're wanting to add tension to your chord progression is add dissonant intervals to your chords. The next two tips will cover some ways you can add more tension to your chord progressions. So tip number four would be to extend your chords, and extending your chords means basically adding 7ths, 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths to your chords. You can take a really simple chord progression and make it sound more jazzy and more advanced just by adding some extensions. Some of my favorite extensions are major 9ths, minor 11ths, dominant 11ths, dominant 13ths. What are your favorites? Let me know in the comments. Let's take this E major chord progression and apply some extensions. For the E major, we can play an E major 9. For the C sharp minor, we could play a C sharp minor 11. For the A major, we could play an A major 13. Like that. And then for the B7, we could actually change it to a B11 chord. And if we want to extend it even further and add some more tension, we could turn it into a B13 chord to really milk that tension that the dominant chord produces. Just a quick example of what you can do by extending your chords. Tip number 5 is to use non-diatonic chords. So far, all the chords we have used are diatonic, which means they all fit into our key. But if you use non-diatonic chords, you can really spice your chord progressions up. Now, I'd be here all day if I was to show you all the techniques that you could use. You could use things like secondary dominance, tritone substitutions, chromatic mediants, line cliches, modal interchange. All these techniques are mentioned in my book, Chord Charisma, which you can check in the description. The main point of this is to use non-diatonic chords every now and again, sprinkle them into your chord progressions. It creates a sense of surprise for the listener because they're hearing things in a key and they hear a chord that's out of that key and it just throws things off a little. However, you do not want to overthink things, and that is tip number 6. Do not overthink. Maybe a C sharp minor 11 sharp 13 flat 9 augmented diminished / A flat 7 augmented 5th minor 7 works in your chord progression, but maybe just a C major chord works just as well. You have to make sure that whatever chords you're using serve the song that is being played. A lot of frustration can be avoided by just keeping things simple. And actually, you might be frustrated with a song or a chord progression that you're writing. It might not sound complex enough for you. But an additional note here is to not give up on the chord progression until you've heard other elements of the music being added, such as melodies and other instrumentation, because then it could turn into something really awesome. Tip number 7 is to use passing chords. Now, passing chords are chords that you add and sprinkle in between the main chords in your chord progression. See passing chords as the icing on an already delicious cake. You have a chord progression finalized, but then maybe in between those chords you can add a few little spicy ones just to add some interest and a cool sound to your progressions. So for example, let's take a couple of chord progressions and add some passing chords to them. First of all, I'm going to take a C chord, D minor, and E minor. That is our chord progression. These are all a tone apart, and when you have chords that are a tone apart, you can play diminished chords in between. We take our C, then a C sharp diminished, then our D minor, then our D sharp diminished, and then our E minor. Just adds a little bit of flair to your chord progressions. Another thing you could do is secondary dominance, for example. So take C, A minor, F, G. I'm not going to go fully into the description of secondary dominance, but if I add some passing chords in between those 4 chords, then you can spice things up a little bit. So there you have it, passing chords. So tip number 8 would be to store your ideas. Now, I have a massive backlog of hundreds and hundreds of chord progressions that I've written. The vast majority of them have not clicked when I have written them. However, you can revisit these chord progressions with a new perspective and new knowledge once you've learned and spent some time learning new techniques. And when you see those old chord progressions you wrote, they could maybe turn into something that's golden. So just a very quick tip, don't throw your song and chord progression ideas away. Tip number 9 is to add rhythmic and dynamic diversity to your chord progression. So sometimes it's not which chords you're playing, but how you play them. So first of all, let's talk about dynamics. Quite simple, just a range of dynamics in your chord progression. For example, on your more relaxed and less tense chords, you could play a softer kind of style, and as the tension builds in your chord progression, you could have a more harsh kind of strumming style, and that will really add to the tension of the chord progression. For example, just a very simple example there. Also, having a lot of rhythmic diversity in your playing is going to really change up how your chord progressions sound. So have you tried maybe playing behind the beat or ahead of the beat? Those are two different ways you can add rhythmic tension as opposed to harmonic tension. And then there are different rhythmic note values, such as dotted eighths, or you could maybe play triplets. Maybe even quintuplets. Those are some examples of different rhythmic note values that you can apply, and if you mix them together, then you get a really cool, rhythmically diverse sound that can really enhance your chord progressions. The 10th and final tip is to break the rules. Music theory is seen by a lot of people as a restriction, but I like to see it as a toolbox. It's a set of tools and fun options that we have to make our music sound better. So as I said previously in the video, as long as whatever you're playing serves the song, who cares if it's right or if it's wrong? Rules should be broken, and I really encourage it. Your ear can be a really great guide, and I've written songs personally where I've just been messing around on the fretboard, not knowing what I'm doing at all, and it's turned out great for me. We will conclude the video there, and if you liked the video, please click like, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you click that notification bell. And let me know what you thought in the comments. If you've got any other video suggestions, let me know in the comments too. Now go and check this one out. Check this video. You know you want to. Go on. Go on. Check it. Watch the video.